I'm Ashley Brundage, and this is how you sell without selling out. Rogers that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. And today we have a great friend of mine, someone who is a leader, but not just any leader. She's a servant leader. I first met Ashley Brundage not that long ago, but I knew who she was in multiple ways, one of which was through my dad. My dad has a unique story. He was a previous podcast guest and grew up overseas in a third world country, moved here and had a background in social work. And I didn't know what that meant until I became a young adult. And I learned about the United Way. I learned about Habitat for Humanity. I learned about like truly giving back. And then in that world, there are groups of leaders that just do it to a whole different scale. And that's Ashley. We've been grateful, or not grateful, we've been blessed to connect in YPO now. We're teammates in that. And it's just so fun learning from her from afar. I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio, and then we're going to jump into some questions. She is the CEO of the Dallas area Habitat for Humanity and brings over 20 years of experience in affordable housing and community impact. And we're going to dive into what that actually means. She's a fierce advocate for ending homelessness and has led transformative initiatives and championed policy reforms to expand housing access. Now she's leading the Dallas area Habitat and building stronger communities through collaboration and innovation. It's a mouthful, but it's important. And the real estate guy in me is excited to learn all about the stuff that they're doing and more. So with that all being said, welcome Ashley to the podcast. How was the intro? It
was perfect. I want to have a copy of it.
Really?
I love it.
Yeah. Well, you actually have to sign it for us. So get us inside the story. Like who is Ashley?
Who is Ashley? I am, I don't know, just a very passionate person who grew up here in North Texas. I grew up in Coppell. I've always been very passionate about social justice, like since a young age, without really understanding what it was. What does that mean?
Okay, good. There's my first question.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, but I was that person who would hold people accountable when they would say racist comments or when they were being very judgy or stereotyping people. You know, I was that annoying little kid that was like, you shouldn't say those things to adults. And
what do you think that is? Like, I have that wiring too, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that, I don't know why I'm going to reference this, but that show on 2020 or Dateline, What Would You Do?
Yes.
Remember that? I was like, I would be the guy every time that would just crush someone's face for being rude to someone that had challenges.
Yes,
but
exactly. I'm always the person that's like, I want to stop on the side of the road and pick up everybody that's walking. And I'm like, well, that's probably not safe.
Yeah. It actually has a large truck. So, but as a young kid, you just had this, you know, your moral integrity meter is through the roof.
Yeah, it was really high. And I think it's empathy, right? Like I have kind of grown to understand that I'm a very empathetic person. Like I can really feel what other people are feeling without like.
Did y'all see that? She was staring into my soul for a second. And I was like, what am I feeling? Am I tired? The coffee's working.
And I think it relates to that. I went off to Texas A&M and there got involved in a Alpha Phi Omega, which is a volunteer service fraternity.
Wow.
It's a co-ed service fraternity. So I've always been involved in service projects, right? So I spent most of my service hours on a crisis hotline. That's how I volunteered my time, was a 24-hour crisis hotline.
As a college student?
Mm-hmm. And I would answer the calls for people who were feeling suicidal or having different kinds of issues. And
as a college student, how do you even get trained for something like that?
There was a training that they put you through. The organization that I volunteered for, they would give you, it was like a 24-hour training, or probably longer than that, but and then you have a booklet that you can refer to during the calls. And then there's a expert that's on call for you if things get too hard. But
where are you taking the calls from? Like your
home? They would forward the calls to your home number. This is when you actually had landlines.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, always volunteering, right? And doing different things like that. I ended up changing my major a couple of times. I went in, I was going to do international business. And ended up going to teaching and then ended up going into psychology because I just really liked the idea of being able to help people in that way.
I think that's I did psychology too. I think it's the most underrated degree across the board. And I think it can be applied to so many different things.
It really can.
And like the fascination is kind of forced too. I was the worst student ever. I hated school, but I love psychology classes. Yeah. It's learning how people obviously think and operate, and you can squeeze out however which way you want.
Yeah.
So back to the empathy thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's like a calling, right?
Yeah,
you have
it
this
really
calling.
was.
Did you ever try to run from it?
So sort of. I think I did kind of take a little bit of a turn from it because psychology, I thought, well, I'll go into counseling. I worked at a juvenile detention center for a couple of years.
In College Station?
Out of college. So here in Dallas, I worked at Medlock, which is down south of Dallas. And then I worked at another one called Dallas Youth Academy that's since been torn down. But it was where boys were locked up for 2 to 6 months. It was a short-term stay that
Like
they were
younger?
there.
Oh my
All
gosh.
teenagers. Yeah. And I realized then that I don't want to counsel people, like that that's not what I want to do. I wanted to help on a broader scale. And I think that's where I really changed into social work. So similar to your dad. So I went and got my master's degree in social work and really started understanding how the broader systems can be changed to help people on a macro level. So there's 2 different routes that you can take in social work. And one is this direct practice counseling and one is the more macro route. And so really started focusing on how can I make broader change at that systems level.
Is there a path when you do that? Is it like you're going to go and work for Habitat for Humanity or you're going to create your own?
It is very focused on going into nonprofit administration. So it's not a specific organization, but anywhere. And so that's, and I think going through school to, kind of strengthen the social justice aspect of my personality, going through social work school and hearing people try and sort through their internal like ethical conflicts that they had. So say they had certain beliefs around like homosexuality.
You're saying like fellow students?
Yeah, fellow students. And
you just assume people that are studying this are going to have an open mind and
accepting. And be open to serving everybody, helping everybody. If they were going to be a counselor, they would counsel everybody.
And they weren't.
And they were not. No. And it was really interesting to me to learn that people could still go through social work school and end up that way, I think. I don't know. It was just
it's almost like they went there for rehab purposes to try to correct themselves. And
it still didn't work though. Yeah. So, and I mean, ethically, you don't have to counsel somebody if it's not an expertise, but you can't discriminate against them based on your values either. So it was a fine line that these folks were walking, and we had lots of discussions around things like that. And so I think that really strengthened just my passion for caring for people as who they are, caring for people as human beings. I went into United Way of Tarrant County. That was my internship actually while I was in grad school. And then I got hired on there.
It's probably where do you know my dad?
No, you've asked me that before.
Okay.
We've not met somehow. I don't know how, but we've not met.
Yeah. So this is whether this airs or not. So my dad was born in Germany, grew up in Pakistan. My grandpa used to open YWCAs.
Oh.
So there used to be like a women's, a women's and a men's. And then he moved to California, but then he was in social work with United Way, which led him to Texas. And that's how he met my mom. There's a whole story there. But he's always been involved with the United Way.
Yeah.
So you worked there post
grad school. So I worked
what?
Grad school.
Oh, okay.
So I started working with United Way Tarrant County, and that's where I really got involved in homelessness. I got appointed to the board of the Continuum of Care there in Tarrant County. So it's really complicated, but the Continuum Care is all of your systems who come together to drive the strategy around ending homelessness.
That's only in the United Way?
No, that is everywhere.
Mothership.
Yeah, that's actually a HUD thing. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it's a federal designation that every geographic region has this Continuum of Care. And if you don't have one in your county area, then the state usually has a balance of state continuum of care.
And you started that?
No, I got appointed to the board. So
at a young age.
Right out of grad school, I was representing the city of Arlington out there on that board, and just really started to learn and understand a lot about homelessness and about treating people with dignity and respect, no matter their circumstances. And you see, and this is something I'm still super passionate about, and you'll see me comment on it on social media quite a bit around, you don't have to give people money that are sitting on the side of the street. You don't have to stop and talk to them, but you do need to at least acknowledge their presence.
Yeah.
Because they're human beings, right? And people will go into this like tunnel mode around somebody who is experiencing homelessness and just act like there is not even somebody standing next to them.
They don't know how to act.
They don't know how to act, and
even if they're in a car.
Yeah, even if they're in a car, and it's just like, just look at them, just say hello, just acknowledge them. You don't even have to speak, but like they're not there.
Yeah,
acknowledge their presence, and so that's something that has always been like kind of stuck with me since I started there. This is kind of a long story about who is Ashley, but there's been a lot of points, right, where I've been influenced, I guess. And that was one of the biggest ones, is getting involved in homelessness there.
So the Department for Continuum?
It is, no. So it is the Continuum of Care for Tarrant County.
But that's specialized in the vertical of homelessness or just overall?
All homelessness in Tarrant County.
And so that's where you kind of found, passion's not a fair word, but like what you wanted to specialize in, the umbrella of social work. That was what gave you the gift of falling in love with fixing homelessness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so brought that with me to United Way of Dallas. And so then I got involved with the Continuum of Care over here. At the time was Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance.
You're saying the Continuum of Care for Dallas.
Yeah. They're different for each geographic region.
Got it.
Yeah. So when I started working, because I only worked for United Way Tarrant County for 2 years, I started working for United Way Dallas after that in 2007. And that's where I was for 17 years. And the Continuum of Care in Dallas, I stayed involved in, but became then more broadly interested in community impact. So really from a United Way perspective, they're very focused on education, income, and health. And so
for homelessness,
for everything. United Way does everything across education, income, and health. So I started focusing on all of that. But in 2016, with the police officer shooting here in Dallas, that is when my racial equity journey really began. So United Way
underneath the continuum.
No, just in general,
internally.
United Way started a fund to help address racial equity here in the community. When that happened, they were giving out some grants to different folks around helping bridge the gap between. It was kind of two things. It was helping educate around racial equity and racism, but it was also then to help try and bridge relationships between police officers and civilians.
Your passion, your empathy meter skyrockets for a whole different vertical under the umbrella of social work.
Yeah.
And then you
racial equity
pivoted towards.
I started doing a lot of reading, a lot of attending conferences, just to really understand racial equity, racism, how it impacts the systems that we're involved in.
At any part along the way, because you and I are wired similarly, and I'm a accepting person and I don't have that filter. But how do you avoid anger along the way? Where it's just like we're
I don't.
white. But I'm saying we're white people born into a white family, and we're privileged to be in a city like Dallas. And how do you not? Yeah, but how do you handle that? Like the ignorance that we experience just as a community in 2025 is still insane.
Yeah. There are very much times where I get angry about things. But for me, I try to channel that into what can I do to help? So I'm constantly talking to people about it. Because of the journey that I've gone through and the work that I've put into learning about how racism impacts our community, our city specifically, and housing specifically. I will sit and I will have conversations with people about it, and I will hold them accountable for it and question their thinking and make them question their thinking, so that we can really kind of do my best, at least, to educate one person at a time. Right.
Do you have to get trained on that?
I think you need to spend time learning.
Yeah.
There are trainings out there to help you learn more about racial equity, about racism, about the impacts that it has in different aspects. I go to a lot of conferences just to hear different speakers, but my main thing was I spent time just reading different books.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books that I read at the very beginning of that is The New Jim Crow, and talking about how we've gone from being very showy, demonstrative about no Black people drinking from these water fountains or preventing Black people from voting, to now we do undercover racism type things. And that's the new way of doing Jim Crow laws. So, for instance, if somebody goes to prison, when they are released from prison, there are criminal background checks that prevent people from getting into apartments, right? Or criminal background checks that keep people from accessing housing vouchers. So when you see the over-policing that happens in our nation, and that more Black people are sent to prison on a regular basis than any other race, and then more Black people are coming out of prison, then more Black people are then are experiencing homelessness than any other race because of all of these factors that add up that are just go back to racism.
So you have a calling. You've to go and help with a little bit more within the social injustice system, where at this phase in your career, your journey, your life, it was helping correct racial injustice. And so
through housing. That's really where it got to.
I want to tie it. I want to tie it together. So how did that lead you to the housing side of things?
Yeah, because what you see now, the years of like systemic racism that's been put into the housing industries, like all of them, the mortgage banking, where homes are built, where people could live, all of the redlining that you've heard about before. That has gotten us to where we are today. So when you look at the city of Dallas and you see Black people overrepresented in homelessness, and you see all of the poverty is below 30 in Southern Dallas, and that's also where the majority of people
I-30 or 30. Mm-hmm. Okay,
I-30. It's also where the majority of people of color live, is below I-30 in Dallas in poverty, right? And it all goes back to the redlining that occurred to keep Black people from living up north in the white suburbs and the white areas of Dallas. So for me, my journey led me to everything that's racist in our city and our community can be addressed through housing and through better housing policy and through doing better, doing more affordable housing across the community, not just in Southern Dallas, where a lot of our affordable housing likes to be targeted, and where honestly, that's where the majority of habitat building is happening right now, is in Southern Dallas, because it's the only place where you can find affordable land. But what we need is more affordable housing across the community, because what we need to see is people being able to move, have diverse communities across our city. But that's also where you hit the strongest, opposition to affordable housing, is when you try and build up north.
So what is your definition of affordable housing?
Sure. So it's really, we try to target anything from 120% AMI below. So we're selling homes at approximately $350,000 and below. AMI is an area median income. So the area median income, if you say I think I know what 60% AMI is for around a family of four, is usually around $50,000. So we're trying to get a family of four that can make $50,000 a year household income into a home. And at 60% AMI, we're selling homes that are around $250,000 or less.
So, and I feel like we missed a little bit of the story.
That's okay.
No, but it's fascinating. So you were at United Way, mm-hmm. right? And then you decided the unfortunate incident in 2016 happened, and you felt this internal calling to, mm-hmm. Pivot, and then it led you to racial injustice with homelessness. What was the gap to get you to Habitat?
Yeah. So in COVID, I went in deep into affordable housing advocacy and eviction prevention. And I spent a long time transforming our homelessness response system with that group, the Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance, that continuum of care group I mentioned.
Dallas,
yes. And so they changed their name. They're now called Housing Forward. So I did, during COVID, I did not get to start a new hobby. Everything, if you remember during COVID, that's when people really started talking about the housing crisis that we're in. Huh. And my running line was, this is not new. We've been in a housing crisis. We've had people experiencing homelessness.
People just had time to get educated.
It started hitting the middle class. It started hitting the lower middle class. It started hitting more white people. So people started paying more attention.
Wow.
All of that really, there was just this huge culminating moment while I was still at United Way, where everything that I was doing was in housing and homelessness and advocacy and programming, all in that space. And as we exited out of COVID, it became clearer to me that that is really what I was passionate
But you were
about.
still a part of United
But
Way.
I was still a part of United Way. So I've only been at Habitat now for 8 months.
Okay.
And it was one of those, moments of clarity where I'm like, this is what I want to do. And I can continue and do it at United Way, but only so far, right?
Yeah.
I was never going to actually
It wasn't a specialty.
Mhm, exactly. I still had a whole lot under my purview at United Way. And so when the job opened up and they started recruiting for the Habitat position, I went in with if I'm coming over here, this is the vision that I want to see happen for our Habitat, because the Dallas Habitat was not active in advocacy at the time. There was not a Habitat voice in the affordable housing discussions that were happening at the city for the past few years. And so I went in talking to the search committee and to the board about, if we do this, if I do this, this is what I want. I want to see a stronger advocacy platform here at Habitat for Humanity, because we are the most important voice in affordable housing, and we should be vocal about what needs to happen in our city. And they said, yes, agreed. And I said, I want us to move beyond the single family home. We can't just keep building these 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes.
Multifamily.
We have to do townhomes. We need to do duplex. Habitat is still very focused on home ownership. So multifamily would be condos if we got into it. And that's still probably a ways down the road for us to figure that out in a way that actually pencils for us. But they were very open to the townhomes and duplexes idea. And then I said, it's important to me to do mixed income communities. So where I said we are building in Southern Dallas.
The AMI thing?
Yes. So where we're building in Southern Dallas, I said, I don't want to put 100% affordable Habitat homes down where I can put 30 homes in these 2 parcels that we have. I said, I want to do mixed. I want to do affordable. I want to do middle income homes, and I want to do some market rate homes. Our job is to be not just putting affordable homes on the ground, but to be revitalizing communities as well, especially if we're in Southern Dallas.
You're the fuel for diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, diversity is probably not fair.
Diverse housing products.
Yeah, but I'm saying, you're helping create a bigger melting pot.
Yes, exactly.
And it's not just racially, right?
Yeah, it's everything, income levels. And so talking to the board, I got hired. They loved my vision for where we could take Habitat. And so then I moved over to Habitat, and now it's that's all I get to do now is affordable housing, and it's exciting.
You feel like you've come alive professionally?
Yes.
Yeah, not that you weren't before.
No, but it's a totally different feeling.
It's euphoric. I've experienced my own version of that. I'm still kind of figuring it out.
It's a little wild being in charge of all the decisions.
Yeah. It's, you know what though? You deserve it. And I had a buddy of mine a few weeks ago. I was meeting with him, and not that you have experienced this, but I have.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, I think I'm having a midlife crisis. He's like, you need to there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's there needs to be, the midlife crisis has to be rebranded. Right?
Yeah.
To where it's a midlife or mid-career.
Awakening.
Yeah, awakening.
Yeah.
And I feel like COVID was awful. It was such a terrible time for so many people, but it gave maybe some people the opportunity to pause and really, focus on what they really, really want to do, not just professionally, but from a career standpoint. So with that, who started Habitat? Was it the Shriver family?
It's Millard Fuller is his name. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just a nice guy. Who his goal really was to help build community, not even help build affordable houses. It was to help build a community through constructing homes.
So as the CEO, you're about a year in, and it's awesome. It's exciting. So what does your approach look like to go and take the excitement and the, not ignorance, but not knowing everything that's happening behind the scenes? How do you go and couple that with a company? How long has Habitat been around just in general?
The Dallas Habitat will have been around for 40 years.
Wow.
I think Habitat International has been around for maybe 50 or 60 years, not much longer.
Wow. So, but it's still, it's established. It's a multi-decade old company. How do you go and take all these different verticals of experiences you have and apply it to something that wasn't broken, but you're going to go and try to scale it differently with, you're working 25 hours a day on it because you want to. Right. So taking an entrepreneurial mindset to a corporate, not, it's a nonprofit social injustice, barrier breaker. How do you do that and know that it's going to take a different version of time where, people like you and me, it's like, we want it fixed yesterday.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I have to be a little bit patient. My first thing was I had to build the right team. So when I came over to Dallas Habitat, I got to hire 4 senior level positions that were vacant at the time. So that was exciting, right? Like I got to build out my chief marketing officer, chief real estate officer, chief development officer, and probably somebody I'm forgetting. Development. Anyways, I got to build out my senior team. And so that took a long time. CFO, the most important one, our chief finance office. That one took the longest to fill. It's hard to find a CFO in Dallas right now, especially in nonprofit, because we can't pay as much as all the for-profit financing firms that are around here. So that was the first thing, is I really got to focus on shoring up our internal operations and building the foundation for us to then be able to do all the great things that I want to do.
And you've done this in less than a year. Mm-hmm. You got to give yourself credit. Yeah, it's a blessing or a curse being a doer.
Yeah.
And a fixer.
Yeah.
And
because I want it to happen faster.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You should be so proud of what you've done. And maybe here's a loaded question: What does the short term future look like?
Yeah.
Like how are you going and taking? You've built your team of Avengers. How are you going to go conquer the world of homelessness, especially in Dallas?
So through Habitat, we focus on building the affordable housing to help people remain stable, right? So it's not quite as much around ending homelessness as it is preventing people from falling into homelessness through having the house and the home ownership that they can afford. So we are building as quickly as we can. We're in the short term is we have started building on all of the infill lots that we have under our purview right now. So we had quite a few assets when I came in as far as just these single infill lots that we could go and build homes on. So we're doing that. And at the same time, the 2 large parcels, we are starting to raise the funds to do the land development for, and talking to different partners in the community that land development is their specialty because Habitat is not specialized in that. And trying to find some good partners that can help us do that at an affordable rate so that we can keep everything affordable.
Which goes back to one of the obstacles at the beginning. It's like if you're trying to, bridge the gap between diversity with whatever, it's only getting more expensive in DFW. And so how do you go and pinpoint new opportunities that are not South Dallas, right?
Yeah,
Frisco is tough. The Park City is tough. Coppell is tough. How do you do that? It's like you're planning the future.
Easy. So, and that's the other thing. The other short-term thing is really rebuilding a lot of relationships and partnerships that Habitat has lost over the years. And then introducing my network to Habitat and the importance of affordable housing from a Habitat perspective, and what can they do to help me over here versus at United Way. And a lot of that is helping me identify that land that's available. So help me throughout Dallas and Kaufman County, which is the 2 geographies that we serve. Help me find the land that's affordable.
You're saying Dallas County.
Dallas County and Kaufman County. And then if it's not something that maybe Habitat can purchase, like who are those partners that are willing to do a joint venture with us? You go and buy the land, and then we'll help take down the lots, a certain number of lots that we can put affordable housing on, and then the rest can go market rate or something. And then everything pencils in the end. You might take a little bit of a haircut because of the affordability, but how can we do something like that that's providing a lot of good for our community and only a little bit less revenue in your pocketbook in the end?
It's tough.
It's fairly tough. It's a hard sell, right? Because everybody's in housing to make money.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest investment products that we have in the United States.
Wow. Do you feel like it reaches a point to where you do your job so well that like you guys kind of work yourselves out of,
That'd be amazing. And that's like every nonprofit's goal, right? Is to work ourselves out of being in business, so that we solve the problem that we were created for. I think that right now, especially here, if you look at just in Dallas County, right? There's not enough of us that are doing affordable housing for us to get out of this crisis anytime soon, unfortunately. I think if there's a way for us to create more people who are doing affordable housing, who realize the benefit of affordable housing across the community, then that's my goal, right? Is to find those people that are willing to do more good and work ourselves out of business that way.
I think
But
YPO
Habitat can't do it alone.
YPO will be such an awesome blessing. It's just how to navigate it.
Yeah.
I've got to fire off some of the cliche questions. What are you most excited about right now for Habitat?
I am most excited that today we have a board meeting and we're going to approve our strategic plan for the next 5 years.
Oh,
I know.
That's awesome.
That's a huge success for us, is to have kind of our
Did you just raise the roof?
I did.
2004 is smiling down on us, baby. Are we baby boomers?
I know.
No, we're Gen Xers.
Gen Xers.
The roof has been raised here.
Yes, it has.
Yeah,
that's exciting. But I'm also, like I said, my most exciting thing is having a team around me that's as passionate about this work as I am.
Yeah,
that's exciting. We're having so much fun working together.
You've done. Yeah. What pushes you for greatness? Like, how do you do this in a city that is, Dallas is great. It's relatively diverse. It's becoming more diverse, which is so awesome. But this is a city fueled by money.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a city fueled by status and, like any other large city. But how do you continue to wake up and keep the focus on your own version of being great in the world of nonprofit in a city like Dallas, which is a real estate city that might be, make it a little bit more difficult with what you're doing. But what's your North Star?
It's very internal, intrinsic, just that, like, I always like to be the best at what I do. So that drives me a lot. But also I see the little things that are happening that I know are going to lead to better, great change. And so I try to keep my eye on those things.
So the little kid that would go and stand up to the bullies in school is doing it now to scale. Right. And so you gotta be proud of the fact that you've never wavered from your North Star. Biggest challenge you faced throughout your career?
Oof.
Maybe in the vertical of helping prevent homelessness.
Oh, I think that the biggest obstacle there is really the stigma that is attached to homelessness. So for me, the biggest obstacle was getting more people, more philanthropists, more foundations interested in helping end homelessness. And there's kind of a longer story there that I know we don't have time for, but that was my biggest obstacle, is how do we make people pay attention to homelessness the way that they pay attention to education? Well,
here, tell them. How would you, if you had 1 minute to ask, what's the 1 minute?
It really is. So I would say, housing is the stability by which every person, every family, every child is ever going to be successful in any other aspect of life. If we don't help people exit homelessness through housing, get them that stable place to live, everything else that we are attempting to fix in our country, the education system, the living wage, all of those things are never going to be fixed until people have that safe, stable place to live.
Good luck fighting that. Best advice you've ever received?
When I graduated college from Texas A&M, my uncle said, "Congratulations. Now you have to learn to control the Owen face." Owen is my maiden name. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, you have our face and it gives away everything that you think. And now you have to learn to control it. And so I still have not mastered it, but I have learned to control it as much as possible when I know people are paying attention, and when I wasn't in more of a position of authority. I feel like now I can let loose a little bit more with the facial expressions.
Or she wears a lot of masks. So control the Owen face.
Control the Owen face.
Okay, then what's the best advice you would give? Whether it's somebody who has that heart pull for helping with social working or social injustice, or following their dream, or pivoting, after having a successful 20-year career, what's the best advice you would give? No pressure.
Yeah. No, I think it is to network and partner and get to know everybody in the community who is working in your space or working near your space, and to continue to learn from one another. I think the most important thing that I've always done throughout my career is to partner and collaborate with people and not try to do it by myself. You can't do this work alone.
You'd be great in a band. I love music, and I'm fascinated with drummers that are singers, because they're like, again, we have 2 daughters, Don Henley,
Yeah.
Collins, Phil Collins. But the irony is they're lead singers, but they're drummers.
Yeah.
And so they're letting the other people get the accolades. So you should, if you're not already a drummer that sings, you should, today's the day.
I've always wanted to play the tambourine though.
Well, I think you can start yesterday. It's coming back. The tambourine is coming back.
That's my thing from the Monkees. I always wanted to
Mickey
do
Dolenz?
Yes.
Wow. Here's a fun fact. The first person to find out that Abby was pregnant with Henley was Mickey Dolenz.
What?
Yeah, there's a whole nother random story. But yeah, I love the Monkees. I think they're so underrated, so underappreciated. They're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They should be, but they were also the first group of reality TV stars.
Yes, I know.
People don't realize this.
Yeah.
They were cast.
I watched the show growing up.
Same, duh. Yeah. I'll never forget the day that Davy Jones died. And here's a random fun fact. Mike Nesmith, who was like the goofy guy that wore the beanie, is from Dallas.
No,
and his
really?
mom was a administrative assistant at a law firm who created liquid paper, later known as Whiteout.
Yeah.
There's your fun Dallas fact of the day. And then level 2 of that is John Briggs, that runs our commercial company, lives in her former house. So always comes back to the Monkees and Mickey Dolenz.
There you go.
Legacy. That's a big word. It's a big word, especially for someone with you. You have such huge shoes that you're filling. What does your legacy look like professionally?
It's really that I was trusted by the communities that I worked in and made the change that I set out to do.
Yeah. Mic drop. Sorry.
Sorry, was I too fast?
No. It's powerful. You obviously probably talk about this more than any guest we have. And that probably is also a little bit of your Northern Star. Yeah. Right? It's like you find a way, you're held accountable by the community, but you have to hold yourself accountable first, which is not an easy task, at least for me. Yeah. Best way to support you?
Yeah, I think 2 things. Encourage your neighbors, your family, your friends to understand how important affordable housing is to the vibrancy of a community. And, Habitat needs money to build these houses. So please donate to DallasAreaHabitat.org and give what you can. And then you can come out and volunteer to build as well.
How hard is it to become a volunteer?
It's not hard at all. So there's training that you can take if you want to be a regular, like long-term volunteer and come and help manage other volunteers on site.
Wow.
And that's about a 40-hour training. If you just want to show up and build one day, you don't need any training at all. You just sign up and show up.
Wow. How about that? It's easy. Dallas needs you. They need people like Ashley. And it's on us now. So thanks for doing this. Awesome job. Ashley Brundage. And then Dallas, what's the website again, please?
DallasAreaHabitat.org.
No dashes.
No dashes.
DallasAreaHabitat.org.
Yeah.
Awesome.